Wow. Okay. Lawlers, welcome to a new video here. Today we're just going to be doing something slightly different than the gameplay and the guides that we usually post on the channel. So I saw this news article come out from League of Legends Riot Team, I believe it's the dev team here, on quick gameplay thoughts for basically 2021 in the state of League of Legends going into Season 11. So I guess before we jump into some of this stuff, I just wanted to maybe read through some of these things, share my thoughts on the game at a high level, and then maybe grab some feedback from you guys of how you view the game and how you're enjoying it in Season 11 so far, and if you feel it's actually quite different from previous seasons, or if you think it's moving in a different direction. I think overall, I think the game is still very fun and will continue to be fun. But that said, there's a lot of elements in 5v5 gameplay like this where if you're queuing up as a solo queue player, there's always going to be frustrations and there's always going to be things that is going to make you feel like you just can't win a game no matter what. So I mean, I think they're going to talk about things like burst damage and snowball potential and things like that in this article here. But one of the frustrations that I still have, and I know that probably a lot of you do, is that if you queue up into a game 5 minutes in and half your team is dying, once a minute, it just feels like the game's over and there's really no point to playing. So I'm interested to see what they have to say about some of those things, and also interested to hear what you guys have in terms of your experiences. So state of the game overall here, what do they say? At a high level, we wanted preseason 2021 and our work throughout the 2020 year to be about strengthening and improving the foundations of League for the next 10 years. That's pretty ambitious for another decade. So we're going to do a quick overview here of things they like and things they want to improve. So item system update. I mean, overall, I think the item system update was a success. I know that some people are upset about the difficulty to locate a specific item in the shop very quickly, and if you click all items or have to still sort through things like marksman items or bruiser items, there's some things to sort out there with the user interface. But I think overall it's really cool now that while you're in a game, you can see recommended items based on the matchup that you're in or on the other opponents that are on the other team. So if you need something like mobility, or if you need something like damage or tank, anti-tank or anti-burst, stuff like that, I think it's a pretty good update. The other thing with the items that I think everybody was complaining about was on some of the icon art itself. It was maybe a little bit too cartoonish or not the normal League art that they're used to. But again, I think it's just something that was a bit of a shock when the items first came out. I think everybody's kind of adjusted to it now, and it's fine. So some of the specific things they're saying here with the item system update is what I mean, some of this has to do a little bit more with the diversity here. So we're seeing roughly 20% of our champs crossing our mythic hard binding threshold, so the same mythic item in over 75% of the games. I think something like this is just always going to be a problem. It doesn't matter if you're pushing for item diversity. With the amount of information and the amount of players and all these tools like u.gg or whatever other systems there are out there for analyzing the win percentages of certain item builds, you're always going to find out what's absolutely optimal. And in 2021, it's no different. If something's 1% better in all else equal scenarios, people are going to go with that build. So I think it's going to be really, really hard to ever have true diversity in item builds. I think there's always going to be a class that tends to want to build a certain core item or a certain core item set, and that's just the way it's going to be. I think for lower level play, or maybe just more diversity in terms of I can build a Nico as a burst or as a control mage or as a tank that can still do damage or as an auto attack champ, I think that's still fun and cool to have. So I think that exists. I think it always has. It's just maybe as you climb up the rank and the ladder, it's always going to tend to go towards whatever's the most optimal. What else do they say here? Ba, ba, ba. Last few patches, we've addressed the state of item choices and power levels across many classes to tune the greatest outliers. I mean, things like this where you had Sunfire Cape being so strong, there are certain points where I do believe an item's strength just becomes ridiculous. Like Sunfire Cape as a tank, you could build it and basically out damage an assassin or an ADC while still being tanky. I think that kind of, when you break a class's identity, I think that's when you have a problem. But I'm generally against nerfing things, I'd rather that they buff up other items so that everybody gets stronger and that the classes become more unique and niche, so that if you pick ADC, it's not like, oh, let's make it so that you can survive burst a little bit better so you have a chance to spit out more damage. No, like make the ADC items spit out even more damage, right? Like really isolate that role. So if you pick ADC, you are going to be an attack damage carry. Make a tank that if you pick tank, you're going to be able to soak a lot of damage. Not like, oh, I still need to be able to do damage as a tank and, therefore take some of my tank stats down so I can die. Nah, I'd rather just like, if you pick tank, your identity is you're not supposed to die. If you pick ADC, your identity is you're supposed to pump out a bunch of damage. If you pick an assassin, your identity is supposed to be able to wipe one single target off the map instantly, right? And then sure, maybe you die after that if you can't get out. But I think that overall, like, and this goes back to way back in kind of the Halo days when they were releasing Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, there was a lot of kind of nerfs, and back then nerfs happened like across a game release, not patches. So there was like nerfs to the battle rifle as you progress through the Halo series, or then they buffed up the assault rifle and nerfed the pistol, things like that, where I just wish that some of these games, instead of feeling like they have to nerf things and line everything up on the same level of play, they just instead allowed buffs to take place across the different silos and across the different positions, so you could have a little bit more identity when you pick a certain champ, or back in the Halo days when you pick a certain weapon. Item shop here again. I think we got these backwards. So the item shop and the item system update, I've kind of talked about both of these already. I mean, they say here that the new item shop is 90% of the way complete to finished. Again, I think there's a few little touch-ups they can make to it, but overall pretty good. Position balance, so let's see what they have to say here. So with the item changes, we're anticipating some needed follow-up in position balance. I know that, again, earlier on, maybe at the end of Season 10, there was talk about mid lane's too strong and top lane's too strong and jungle's too strong. It always seems like one role is too strong. So they're looking at pick rate as well as a position's ability to influence the outcome of a game to assess its power and health. So like, this is where I'll say this, right? Like, if you're playing with a full team, it's you and 4 friends, you can carry from any role if your team decides to play around that role and pick a team comp to play around that role, right? So if you pick Jack's top lane and everybody else in the team comp is, being able to pick so you can split push, for example, and you're against a lane opponent that you can split push against effectively and just beat in a 1v1, perfect, great. If they don't, then it's going to be different. So I think position balance has to do more with the team comp than maybe in solo play. If you're in solo play, I mean, and you're a mid laner and the enemy team has maybe a 2 or 3 man comp and their jungler and mid laner are in a party together on a Discord chat, it doesn't really matter if your position is the most powerful in the team if they decide to camp you. You're now going to be the least impactful position on that team. And I know you can say, oh, well, if you draw jungle pressure, then, your other lanes should be able to have more prio and be more aggressive and win their lanes easier because they don't think the jungler is ever going to come and gank. Yeah, but that also depends on, them realizing that, being aware of the surroundings. And most of the time when people queue up for League, they're literally just head in their own lane. They're not even warding. They're not pinging anything. So I think that some of this position bounce really does rely on the jungle. And they say here, one thing on our radar for the future is the jungle position. It's one of the most influential, powerful positions, but also low popularity, meaning there's a satisfaction or accessibility problem. I think so. And I mean, when you pick jungle, it's such a selfless role. You'll never get any kind of kudos from your team. If you do really well, every laner thinks that they're the reason why they won the game, and if you do really bad, every laner will blame you as the reason that they lost. So it's kind of a lose-lose when you pick jungle. But again, I do think that if the enemy team has a laner and jungle in lobby together, it doesn't really matter what position you queue up for. If you're the person that happens to draw the camp or the attention of a 2v1 and your jungler isn't in communications with you and able to help you out, or skirmish 2v2 against them, or counter gank, all that kind of good stuff, you're basically just going to have to try not to feed that game. That's going to be your role. And then really, what is the balance of that position now? You're just basically queuing up to not die, not to really have an impact on the game. So I think that's more an inherent problem of when you choose to play a 5 versus 5 game like this. What else do they say here? Worth noting, we've seen positive reception to the new jungle item experience of buying a jungle starter and getting your build straight away. Yeah, I agree. I think that was a good change. This not only streamlined jungling for new entrants to the role, but also freed up build paths for veterans. Yeah, again, I think this was overall pretty good. I don't see any real downsides. I mean, again, I'm not a jungle main. I've dabbled in the jungle from time to time, and I think it's pretty cool now that I don't have to build that jungle item as my first item, and I can just go into another core item or a mythic item without being considered a troll in that game. So I think that was good, but yeah, so, there's other things here at play that in terms of position balance I think that are outside the role. You can carry from any role, like in top lane, if you pick a champ that has carry potential, you can carry. If you pick a tank, obviously your carry potential is going to be a lot lower. You're going to depend on your team. And I think that's the same for all roles now. You have different types of champs in each role. So you have top lane, you can play tank, you can play bruiser, you can play even marksman, Vayne, Lucian, very popular top lane right now. You can even play support. I think Yumi was very popular in the top lane depending on which patch you're in and which items are powerful. And that same thing goes across all lanes. So I think it has more to do with probably team comps in terms of which position has the possibility to carry a game more than the lane itself, at least in kind of random 5v5 solo queue environments. Burst damage. So at preseason launch, many players felt an increase in burst damage, past the point of where we think it's the healthiest and richest version of League. So I mean, this is interesting, right? Like, again, there was a huge problem with Sunfire Cape being way too overpowered, and they're claiming that there was a burst damage problem. I think that in general, the damage was higher and felt higher than it was in previous seasons. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's still a good feeling to queue up for a game of League of Legends and feel like you can kill anyone on the enemy team at any point. I think that's probably maybe a little bit healthier, not for the game like competitively itself, and for counterplay. I think they mentioned here, we want to be able to have counterplay in combat. I get that, but it is actually more fun just for the average player to log on a Tuesday night and they only have an hour for a game or so, and it reduces some of the anxiety and stress and tilt from if you just log on and you lose two games in 2 hours and you had like 2 kills a game and like 5 deaths a game. Like, that doesn't feel good after an hour. But if you log on and you have 15 kills in a game because you're just bursting people out and the damage is crazy and you still lose, it feels good though, right? Like, you log off thinking, well, man, I owned some noobs today. I really friggin' got on that map and was a god, right? Like, so I think there's something to be said with higher damage and fun compared to kind of counterplay and competitive play where there's lower burst damage. So yeah, it's a bit of a trade-off. I think if all else equal, I'd prefer there to be more burst damage, and as a person who queues up for solo queue, I would probably have more fun feeling like losing games. I still have like 15 kills, and I think that's true of the general kind of low mid elo population, where really they're queuing up for kills. These people aren't thinking about, man, I got to get to that nexus and which turret should I take down, right? Like, they want to queue up to get kills. They'll chase kills, they'll roam for kills, they'll give up 3 waves of farm to get kills. So I think still killing people is one of the most fun things that the general population logs on to play this game for, right? What else do they say here? They've pulled back some burst sources, like, yeah, sure, okay, cool. They've used mathematical analysis with historical comparisons, very technical stuff here to really nerf down some of that burst damage. And then, they mentioned things like time to kill, like LeBlanc's time to kill versus Vayne at typical builds. Again, this is kind of goes right back up to the conversation that we were having earlier in these notes about an assassin's role, right? Like, I have no problem with a LeBlanc being able to kill a Vayne at all points in the game. That's her job. She's an assassin. I think it's actually probably bad that even if late game, early game, mid game, whatever point, LeBlanc cannot kill a Vayne 1v1 if she gets the chance to, right? Like, that would be a problem. Why would you queue up as that assassin then? And this is why you're seeing more roles have, kind of, let's call them off meta champs being picked in them, where Vayne is like a really good top laner now, and she's also could be played mid lane. I think Faker played like some games with Vayne mid lane and absolutely wrecked his opponent. And again, it's Faker, but like, it just goes to show that some champs have kind of blurred those lines of what their true identity might be. Lucian's a great example of that as an ADC who can play mid lane and top lane, and there's other junglers that have made transitions like Ivern going to top lane, right? Like just crazy. So I'd like to see burst damage in roles where it makes sense. I think that's fine to keep it there, but like things like the tank, right? Like if you pick Malphite with the Sunfire cape, I don't know if he should be bursting out 2 or 3 people with his ult. I completely love the fact that when he ults in, he kind of displaces 3, 4 people and can slow people down and soak a lot of damage. But if you're not building him full AP, probably shouldn't be one-shotting people. I have a video I posted on the channel earlier where I build him full tank, but you're still one-shotting people. Like that's maybe the area that they need to look at. So Snowball here, it says something we always watch closely is Snowball, which tells us whether the game flows in a way where player decisions are impactful at all stages. So this is my major gripe with the game still, and I think it always will be, again, just because it's a 5v5. When you queue up as a solo player in a League of Legends game that's going to last anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes, I mean, there's a classic saying of coin flipping, or like really if you're good, your win percentage over 100 games is going to be 60% at best, right? Unless you're smurfing and you're not even supposed to be close to that gameplay level, or you have a duo in your queue or something like that, right? Like there's just games you're going to lose. You're just going to lose them no matter what. So they say here one of our preseason goals was to avoid power creeping in the item system, and increased snowball would be one of the worst symptoms of messing up, because finishing items earlier than your opponent would give you an even bigger advantage. I would actually like to see this aspect of snowball increased. And again, this is from a very selfish view of just a solo queue player where, you know what, if I log in and I'm winning my lane, I still want to feel like even if I have a bot lane that's 0 and 6 collectively by 5-minute mark, I want to feel like I can still maybe carry this game and win. And why shouldn't I? I'm winning my role. I should be able to snowball. Like, it's so frustrating when you're playing League and you force an opponent on a lane and they miss 2 waves of farm. They're like 30 CS behind you, but somehow like they kind of just rebound, rubber band, like level XP right back up to you. And it's like, well, wait a second, I just owned this guy for the first 10 minutes of this game. How is he even close to my power level right now? So I do have a problem with this. And again, this is more from that solo player queue up environment where it's just, you play some games and you just kind of get that feel in the first 5 minutes it's not winnable, and you're going to have zero impact on it. I think that's one of the biggest frustrations of people in League. You'll be playing top lane, maybe you're playing something like Aatrox, like a bruiser, you're going to be mixing it up, and in the first 5-6 minutes, if you're against another bruiser and you outplay them, it feels really good. And like maybe you pick up a few kills, you're 3-0, you're winning your lane, the person can't even farm anymore, you're like, okay, let's win this. And then you take a look up at the scoreboard and you notice that you're like, your team has 0 kills, you're the only one with 3 kills, and it's like 3-10. The other team already has 10 kills and 2 dragons, and you're like, oh, okay, well this game's done, because if I ever leave this lane or they send their bot lane up here, essentially I'm done now, right? So it's like, I get what they're trying to do. They want to make it feel like, there's a chance to come back. Being disadvantaged will never feel good, but ideally comeback opportunities are present, viable enough to keep games fun. Like, I get that, but I'll tell you right now, this isn't being achieved, like, with them thinking that it's not snowbally right now and that they're in a good, like, snowbally mix. It's not that level right now. You can mostly, in almost all of your games, tell in the first 5 minutes which team is going to win, either based on the comp itself or if you have one troll. The biggest snowball part of League right now is if one team has a troll, right? Like if one guy just decides to keep dying or just go AFK and farm the jungle and never gank or counter gank or never try and get objectives, or you have the support player who never decides to play in front of his ADC, doesn't try and harass enemy champs, doesn't push the wave, like just decides to queue up and just sit in the bush and do nothing, right? Like, that's the biggest snowball. Whichever team gets the troll, that's the biggest snowball part of League right now, and I don't know if they've found a way to fix that. So I think this whole section here on snowballing is a bit moot until you figure out how to basically always make sure somebody on a team can carry, even if it is a 4v5. I think this is going to be a problem. And again, that has to speak to things like burst damage and the length of a game. If you're playing a game like Call of Duty or Halo, and even if it's 4v4 or 6v6, the game is so fast paced and there's so much burst damage, like especially if you're playing something like Team Deathmatch, that if a team has a guy who's just insane and he's really, really good, he can carry that, right? Like it's very rare in those types of games where you queue up even if you have a feeder, you're like, oh well, this game's done, because you can just potentially outcarry that feeder with burst damage and just drop people all over the place. You can, quick scope, you can drop people with M16s, you can do whatever you want in those types of first-person shooter games because there's still a very high burst damage element to them, right? So I think it's actually fine to have a higher burst damage and higher snowball potential. I think, again, the biggest problem with snowballing is inters, feeders, trolls, whatever you want to call them. They need to find a way to reduce their ability to impact the game. That's the real problem in my mind for solo queue. New champs and VGUs. So, I mean, I think some of the new champs have been good. Seraphine, I think, was, in my mind, kind of a boring champ. I just feel like it's too similar to Sona in kit and appearance. I don't see the point of it. In general, I feel like as well, I'm a type of person that when I pick a champ, I want to kind of get immersed in their story and feel like when I'm playing this champion, I'm like living that story. Like if I'm playing Renekton, I have all this rage, or if I'm playing, I don't know, an assassin like Talon, I'm going to be able to like traverse the map and essentially be this crazy guy who can show up out of nowhere. And then even things like the flavor text of their backstory and everything, I think that's important. So I actually feel like if they reduced the amount of champs that they release in a given season or a year and spent a little bit more time hyping that champ up or having some more trailers based on their storyline, they might actually sell a bunch more skins, have more people kind of log on to play those champs that have these richer stories. So I think that'll be more interesting, at least for me as a player, and I'd love to know what you guys think if they released less champs overall, but those champs had a deeper storyline behind them. I think that would be better in my mind. So out of the new champs that they list here for some of the updates and everything, again, Set was a cool champ. I think there wasn't really a champion like him. Too similar in the current offering. Fiddle update, I think that was a good update. Volley, again, great visual graphics update. That was really cool. Lilia, an interesting jungler. I haven't played a lot of Lilia, but at least something different. Yone, I think, was really cool. I wish they did again more story on Yone. I would have really liked to know more story or see more trailers, kind of like those movie trailers. I think that's a really massive element for people getting hyped up to log on and play a game. Samira, Seraphine, Rel. I mean, I think Seraphine and Rel were a bit meh for me. Like, I didn't really even get excited to play those champs at all. Like when I saw the Yone trailer, I really wanted to play Yone. When I saw the Seraphine Rel kind of like ability teasers, I was like, doesn't really look like my kind of champ. But that could just be me. Maybe I don't find those types of champs interesting. What else do they say here? Launch balance was also significantly improved compared to 2019, with Samir as the only champ who launched significantly off target. This should be underlined and bolded. It was significantly. I think there's also problems right now in the current patch with Seraphine, where I think if you look her up, her win rate across like top, mid, sup is all like the top of the charts for each of those roles. So when you have a champ who's topping the win rates off on 3 different roles, there's probably a problem there. But anyway, they at least admit that there's ways for them to improve, so that's cool. I think there's a couple other champs that could deserve a visual graphics update. I think that there's a bunch of these champs that were released very early, and I'm not a fan of them changing the kit. Like I wish that instead of maybe even changing the old Aatrox, they just released a new like demon type character that played like the new Aatrox did, and just keep older characters in there. I mean, you're releasing so many characters to begin with anyway. If there's like diehard fans of the game who have been playing the original version of Aatrox for 5 seasons or something like that, I don't think it's worth taking that champ away from them. Just release another one. I don't know, call them like, I don't know, Utrox, who knows, a different version. And then you got ranked notes here. So we launched a small bundle of ranked updates in both preseason and started ranked this year. Overall, this has led to a smoother climb where players are facing more balanced teams, fewer smurfs, and consistent wins becoming more important than win streaks. I mean, that's fine. I don't know, obviously, the details behind MMR. I think that's some like very big calculation that they've never actually revealed. I'll say this again, similar to the snowballing route and queuing up as a solo player in a ranked game. A lot of stuff feels out of your control. And in this game more so than other games where there's ranked elements to it. And again, a lot of my background as a a video game player or even competitively with your friends at home kind of thing, it started with Halo, and I don't know if that's true for a bunch of people watching this now, but in those kind of games, Halo and Call of Duty, if it was you or you and one buddy in a lobby, even if it was like a 4v4 or 8v8, you still felt going into every game, if you were a good player, I might win this game. Going into league games, even if you check out the win rates of everybody else on the enemy team with some kind of third-party app before you actually kick off the game, like they're all negative, it still doesn't feel like you're going to win that game. You're just still, the one thought that I always have before I start a game is, man, I hope we don't have a troll on our team. I hope we don't have an AFK. Man, hope we don't have an inter. Because that's really the deciding factor right now in most of these games. Again, maybe this isn't true in like upper challenger where everybody's actually playing very seriously or queuing up and waiting 30-minute queues to actually play the game. But in platinum and below, if you're trying to queue up for a game, or even just in normals and you're just trying to like have fun on a Friday night, the like biggest thought in your mind when you're queuing up, if you're actually still trying to win that game, is I hope we don't have the troll. That's basically it, and that's true I think in ranked still. So until they fix that issue of somehow trolls having less of an impact, then I don't know what they would achieve here with ranked being more consistent or more fun or a better experience. I think that's always going to be a problem. They talk about negative LP here, like 12 for a win, 16 for a loss. I mean, that kind of stuff like shouldn't happen. I don't care what your MMR is. If you win a game and you lose a game, if all else equal, it should be net even. Like, I don't understand how that brings you lower from where you started. And this is again a problem of if you queue up and you have like an hour to play League each night, or you're just trying to play on the weekend because you have some free time and you want to win still, like you're a semi-competitive person, and you spend 3 games worth of time playing League and you won 1 and lost 2, and you leave feeling like, wow, I'm lower than I started. It's not a great feeling. And I think where the misconception is here, competitive people are okay with losing and not having that good feeling if there's a kind of balanced side of that where it's like, okay, I can do something to change this. I'm going to go and practice my last hitting. I'm going to go and practice this champ in training mode and really get these combos down. So next time I'm going to win all 3 of those games. But it's really not that. Like if you log on and you go 12-0 and you get an S+ grading and you did everything right, but you just had 4 people who went 0-15. I mean, everybody has those games. That's true, everybody has them, and that's the problem right now. Everybody's experiencing these games where there's nothing they can do, and what they take away from that is there's no point in actually getting better myself. I just have to, if I'm better than average, I'm going to win 60% of my games. If I'm really, really, really better than average, I'm still only going to win 60% of my games, right? Like the power a troll has in a game is just too big right now. So I'm interested to see what they do with that. Other changes that they have in ranked where like you don't have to cross a promo series from like gold 3 to gold 2, for example. I think that's fine. Just here or there on that one, who cares? But yeah. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. There's a lot of stuff to digest in this, obviously longer than the small 5-6 paragraphs that they have here for some of these updates. I think this is a very complex issue that came up at the end of last season with a lot of very popular YouTubers and Twitch streamers talking about the ranked environment. And I don't know if that's going to be any better this year. So we'll just have to wait and see. But those are my impressions, guys. I'd love to see in the comments what some of your impressions are, and I'll catch you in the next one.